beautiful train station, and also an awful nice metaphor for where Barack Obama is going to take us as president. He's going to put America back on track. Last night, America looked at the person sitting here to my left, and they just didn't see a winner last night. They saw the next commander-in-chief of the United States of America, Barack Obama. They saw a man with the vision and the strength and the judgment to be commander-in-chief of the United States of America. Folks, America saw a man who understands the threats of today as well as tomorrow, and knows how to deal with them both. Ladies and gentlemen, America saw a man who knows that for the average American, the economic crisis didn't start last week. It started a long time ago. It started when George Bush was elected. And ladies and gentlemen, and the man who's going to change it, who's going to make that change, is Barack Obama. Last night we saw that John McCain continues to be out of touch with the American people. He embraces and continues to defend George Bush's failed economic policy of the last 8 years. And look at the policy, the foreign policy and the national security policy, the focus of last night's debate. This was supposed to be John McCain's turf, and Barack Obama owned it last night. Last night, John McCain talked about how nothing is more important than judgment, a president's good judgment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, John McCain was right about judgment. But the problem is, John McCain's judgment on every important issue has been wrong. He was wrong after 9/11, when John argued that we consider not just attacking Afghanistan, but maybe we should consider, and this is what he said, we should consider attacking Iraq. We should consider attacking Iran. We should consider attacking Syria. He went on to say, the only hard part is deciding which one. He was wrong. He was wrong about the war in Iraq. He stood with Cheney and Rumsfeld and insisted that we'd be greeted as liberators, that there were a sufficient number of troops to do the job, that there were weapons of mass destruction, that victory is imminent. He was wrong. He was wrong on Afghanistan when he said we'll muddle through. He was wrong when he said it was a remarkable success. He was wrong when he said the only reason we haven't read about Afghanistan is that it has succeeded. Ladies and gentlemen, he was also wrong on Homeland Security and protecting us in our homes, our schools, and our streets. He voted against the proposal to fully fund the 9/11 Commission recommendations. He voted against fully funding cops and firefighters, our first line of defense. He voted against immediately equipping our first responders with the ability to speak with one another, National Guard to speak with the police to speak with the mayors to speak with the governor. Ladies and gentlemen, he voted against mandating that we handle screening of cargo containers that come ashore here in North Carolina and in Delaware and all across the nation. 7 million of them a year, and we inspect less than one of them. He voted against mandating they be screened. He voted against security for the tunnels and the bridges and the chemical plants. He voted against implementing the 9/11 Commission. John McCain was wrong in refusing to shift responsibility, as Barack has suggested, and set a timeline, shift responsibility from American troops to Iraqi troops so we can bring our troops home. Ladies and gentlemen, we've spent nearly $20 billion training 500,000 Iraqi army and police forces, and it's about time they start to do the job. John McCain was wrong when he said we should continue to spend $10 billion a month in Iraq while the Iraqis have an $80 billion surplus. Ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, and I'm deadly earnest about this, most importantly, John McCain was wrong in misunderstanding where the central front for the war on terror is. Ladies and gentlemen, it's in the mountains between Afghanistan and Pakistan. It's not in Baghdad. That's where al-Qaeda is planning, as the CIA says, further attacks on the American homeland. That's where bin Laden lives, and that's the central front on the war on terror. On this, John is more than just wrong. He is dangerously wrong. On a question so basic, so fundamental, so critical to our nation's security, we cannot afford a commander-in-chief who does not know where the central front on the war on terror is. Folks, at this moment in our history, we need more than a brave soldier. We need a wise leader, and that leader is Barack Obama. But folks, on the economy, it's also about judgment, ladies and gentlemen. And here again, John McCain demonstrated last night, as he's demonstrated the last 20 years, that he is out of touch, that his judgment is wrong. 9 a.m. last Monday, John McCain said in a speech, "The fundamentals of the economy are strong." At 11 o'clock on Monday, John McCain said 2 hours later, the economy is in crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, lurching, as he has, literally lurching from one position to another in a matter of hours, is not what presidents are to do if they intend on instilling confidence and leading the world. Ladies and gentlemen, leaders at home and abroad looked at that display, and I had to wonder, what is going through this man's mind? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you what was going through his mind. He does not instill confidence. Where was John McCain a week ago? Where was John McCain a month ago? Where is John McCain 5 years ago? Well, I'll tell you where John McCain was, where he's been for the past 8 years, tethered to George Bush's failed economic policies. And what were the essence of those policies? Lack of oversight, shredding consumer protections, and deregulation. John was telling the Wall Street Journal, as now he's telling us that he's these captains of greed, he was bragging to them, and I quote, "I'm always for less regulation." Ladies and gentlemen, John now expects us to believe he is the new maverick legislator that's come to town. Well, you know what we Catholics call that? We call that an epiphany. Ladies and gentlemen, as Barack Obama said last night, it's not sufficient just to deal with this serious economic crisis. It's necessary that there be a wholesale, fundamental change in our economic philosophy, because it's patently obvious that the policies of George Bush, supported by John McCain, what they have done to America over the last years has been devastating. Record unemployment, record home foreclosures, record deficits, and the middle class more under siege than any time it has been in the last 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, and last night, John McCain's silence was deafening on the middle class. The word, the phrase never parted his lips once, not one single time. You know, folks, recently I was in Virginia at a rally, and after the rally was over, this Marine who looked to be somewhere between Barack's age and mine, looked to be a guy that's between 30 and 40. And I'm tired of being the old guy in this deal. It's true. I want you to know it's true. There are only 4 senators more senior than me. But I want you to understand, there are still 39 older than me. That's the only part I want you to remember. But all kidding aside, this Marine walked up to me, and he had his hat on. He was a veteran. He was extremely proud of being a Marine. He looked a little agitated. And he walked up to me, and I was prepared, about to get an earful. And he said, Senator Biden, to be precise, he didn't say Senator, he said, Joe. He said, I want to tell you one thing straight. And he straightened up and he said, I would be proud to salute, and he put his hand up, to salute Barack Obama as my commander-in-chief. The next commander-in-chief of the United States of America, our next president, my friend Barack Obama. He did say that.
Give it up for Joe Biden. Thank you, North Carolina. It's good to be back. I love North Carolina. Thank you, Greensboro. Thank you so much. Thank you to the North Carolina A&T State University Drumline Cold Steel. A&T, I want to thank Mayor Yvonne Johnson for her outstanding leadership. I want to thank State Representative Pricey Harrison. I want to thank Ronnie Ainsley, candidate for Secretary of Agriculture. I want to thank Roy Carter, candidate for Congress of the 5th Congressional District. And I want to thank Dr. Teresa Sue Bratton, candidate for Congress for the 6th District. Give them all a big round of applause. Now, it's good to be back here. How many of y'all get wet a little bit? Just a little bit, you guys up front here. I appreciate you, but so that's okay, huh? Well, it is just good to be back. Every time we come back to North Carolina, we just end up having a great experience. The people here are some of the best people in the country, just warm, hardworking, good people, good spirit. You know, all right. Thank you. All right. Let's go. Before it starts raining again, big man. All right. We meet here at a time of great uncertainty in America. In the era of greed and irresponsibility on Wall Street and in Washington has led us into a financial crisis as serious as we faced since the Great Depression. They said they wanted to let the market run free, but instead they let it run wild. And in doing so, they trampled on our core values of fairness and balance and responsibility to one another. Everywhere you look, the economic news is troubling. But for so many Americans, it's not really news at all. Over 600,000 workers have lost their jobs since January. Home values are falling. Your paychecks don't go as far as they used to. It's never been harder to save, never been harder to retire, to buy gas, to buy groceries. And if you put it on a credit card, well, they probably raised your rates. In so many cities and towns across America, it feels as if the dreams of so many generations, the dreams that so many fought for, are slowly slipping away. Now, last night, we had a debate. And on issue after issue, from taxes to health care to the war in Iraq, you heard John McCain make the case for more of the same. The same policies that got us into this mess. But just as important as what we heard from John McCain was what we didn't hear from John McCain. He talked about the economy for 40 minutes, and not once did Senator McCain talk about the struggles of middle-class families. Not once did he talk about what they're facing every day right here in North Carolina and around the country. He defended the plan to give $300 billion in tax cuts to corporations and the wealthiest Americans, but he had nothing to say about the fact that wages have flatlined and jobs are being shipped overseas. He didn't have anything to say about that. He railed against some study on bears in Montana. That's an old line he's been using since the beginning of this campaign, but he had nothing to say about the fact that more and more Americans can't afford to pay for their college education, can't afford health care for their families, can't afford a retirement that is dignified and secure. Senator McCain spoke again and again about the need to keep spending $10 billion in Iraq. And he said nothing about the need to end this war so we can invest in good jobs and rebuild roads and bridges and put broadband lines all across rural North Carolina, all across America, so we can be competitive for the future. He didn't talk about that. The truth is, through 90 minutes of debating, John McCain had a lot to say about me, but he had nothing to say about you. Didn't even say the word middle class. Didn't say the word working people. You see, I think Senator McCain just doesn't get it. He doesn't get this crisis on Wall Street. He doesn't get the fact that it hit Main Street long ago. That's why his first response to the greatest financial meltdown in a generation was to say that the fundamentals of the economy were strong. That's why he's been shifting solutions this last 2 weeks, looking for a photo op and trying to figure out what to say and what to do. He doesn't really know what to do. It hasn't been clear what to say. Well, North Carolina, I know what we need to do. We need to stop giving tax cuts to corporations and CEOs on Wall Street and start standing up for families on Main Street. We need to turn the page on the failed policies of the last 8 years and finally put working people first. And that's why I'm running for president of the United States of America. We don't need any more out of touch, on your own leadership in Washington. We need a president who will change this economy so that it finally works for your family. We need a president who knows that America's strength and leadership abroad depends on the strength of our economy here at home. We need a president who will fight for the middle class every single day. And that's exactly what I will do when I am in the Oval Office as president. I know these are difficult days, North Carolina. But here's what I also know. I know we can steer ourselves out of this crisis because of who we are, because that's what we always have done as Americans. Our nation has faced difficult times before. And in each of those moments, we've risen to meet the challenge because we've never forgotten that fundamental truth that here in America, our destiny is not written for us, it's written by us. When we come together, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, young, old, rich, poor, when we make a decision that we are going to move this country forward to become more unified and more prosperous, then nothing can stop us when we are together. Now, there are many to blame for causing the crisis that we're in, and that starts with the speculators on Wall Street and who gamed the system, and the regulators in Washington who looked the other way. There was a funny story, if it wasn't so sad, in the newspaper today about how the chairman, the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission said that they had decided that, I guess, voluntary regulations and compliance on Wall Street didn't work after all. So I guess they hadn't figured that out earlier, that these folks weren't just going to give up all that money voluntarily, that you actually had to have some rules and actually had to enforce things. But now that we're here in this crisis, every American, Democrat and Republican, CEO and factory worker, has a stake in solving this crisis and saving our financial system from collapse. Because if we don't act and act soon, your job, your life savings, and your economic security will be put at risk. Now, this administration started off by asking for a blank check to solve this problem. And I said, not so fast. It is unacceptable to expect the American people to hand this administration, or any administration, $700 billion without any conditions attached, without any oversight. When a lack of oversight in Washington and Wall Street were exactly what got us into this mess in the first place. Do we have somebody over there who fell down? We have somebody who fainted down here? Can we get an EMT right here in front? I know it's a little crowded. I'm sure they're okay, but just give them a little room so they got some air, and if we can get an EMT right there in the front there. Now, if the American people are being asked to pay for the solution to this crisis, a crisis they didn't cause, then you have a right to make sure that your tax dollars are protected. And that's why I set out some core conditions for Washington. I said, first, we need to set up an independent board selected by Democrats and Republicans to provide oversight and accountability for how this money is spent every single step of the way. Second, I said if American taxpayers are financing this solution, you should be treated like investors. That means that Wall Street and Washington should get every penny of your money back once this crisis is over and the economy recovers. Third, we cannot and simply will not bail out Wall Street without helping the millions of innocent homeowners who are struggling to stay in their homes. They deserve a plan too. And Washington needs to feel the same sense of urgency in passing an economic stimulus plan for working families, a plan that would help folks cope with rising costs of food and gas, would help save 1 million jobs by rebuilding our schools and our roads, and help states and cities avoid drastic budget cuts and tax increases. And finally, this is important, Greensboro, the American people should not be spending one single solitary dime to reward the same Wall Street CEOs whose greed and irresponsibility got us into this problem. There's been talk that some CEOs may refuse to cooperate with the plan or participate if they have to give up their multi-million-dollar salaries or bonuses. I cannot imagine a position more selfish and more greedy at a time of national crisis. So I will not allow this plan to become a welfare program for Wall Street speculators. Now, I'm glad that Senator McCain has embraced some of these same principles. But the John McCain you've heard over the last few days, the John McCain you heard in the debate last night, that's not the John McCain who's been in Washington for the last 26 years. He talks about getting tough on Wall Street now, but take a look at the record. He said, look at the record. Take a look at that record. He's been against the common sense rules and regulations that could have stopped this mess for decades. He says he'll take on corporate lobbyists, but put 7 of the biggest lobbyists in Washington in charge of his campaign. And if you think those lobbyists are working day and night to elect my opponent just to put themselves out of business, well, I've got a bridge to sell you in Alaska. The truth is when my opponent first reacted to this crisis by saying the fundamentals of the economy were strong, he didn't just make a mistake, he revealed how out of touch he was and how he had embraced the out-of-touch philosophy he's followed for decades in Washington. The idea that if we give more and more to those with the top, prosperity is going to trickle down on everybody. The idea that no harm will be done if we let lobbyists shred consumer protections and fight against every regulation as unwise or unnecessary. Well, what we have seen over the last few weeks is nothing less than the final verdict on this failed philosophy. I don't know how he stood up there trying to defend what's been taking place or trying to distance himself from what's been taking place, because it was just a few months ago that he bragged he had voted with George W. Bush 90% of the time. And I am running for President of the United States because the dreams of the American people cannot be endangered anymore. We can't have another 4 years like we've had the last 8. Yeah, Joe Biden and I, we have a different way of measuring the fundamentals of our economy. One of the reasons that I am so proud to be with Joe Biden, it's not just his fancy foreign policy expertise. It's not just that he's a sharp dresser. I've noticed a lot of women been talking about Joe lately, saying, I've noticed that. See, these girls right here, they're... We know the reason that I'm so proud to have Joe with me is because he has always been fighting for the same folks he grew up with. He knows what it's like to struggle. He knows what it's like to see your father or your mother have to pinch pennies a little bit to get by. And so he's always wanted to fight for you because he understands that the measure we use for economic strength, is whether we're living up to the fundamental promise that's made this country great. That America is a place where you can always make it if you try. That everyone should have a chance to live out their dreams. I know I wouldn't be standing here without that promise. I know that's the promise we must keep once more. You know, when I talk to young veterans who come back from Iraq or Afghanistan, I see my grandfather who signed up after Pearl Harbor and marched in Patton's army and was rewarded by a grateful nation with the chance to go to college on the GI Bill. That's the reason that I am fighting so hard for our future. Did we ever get an EMT person back here? Okay, there's another one right back there. You guys when you come to a rally now, you got to take your water having a little bite to eat. But they'll be okay. They'll be all right. Just give them a little space. In the face of that young student who sleeps just 3 hours before working the night shift, I think about my mom, who raised my sister and me on her own while she was working and going to school at the same time, and who had once to turn to food stamps but was still able to send me and my sister to the best schools in the country. When I listened to another worker tell me that his factory shut down, I remember all those men and women on the south side of Chicago who I stood by and fought for 2 decades ago after the local steel plant closed. Those are my heroes. Theirs are the stories that shape me. It is on their behalf that I intend to win this election and keep the promise of America alive for the people of Greensboro, for the people of North Carolina, and for the people of the United States of America. You know, unlike Senator McCain, I didn't take a crisis on Wall Street. It didn't take a crisis on Wall Street for me to understand that people were hurting on Main Street. It was 2 years ago I introduced legislation to stop mortgage transactions that promoted fraud and risk and abuse. It was 1 year ago that I called on Treasury Secretary Paulson, our Federal Reserve Chairman, to bring every stakeholder together and find a solution to the subprime mortgage meltdown before it got worse. In March, when John McCain was saying, "I'm always for less regulation," I called for new 21st century regulatory framework to restore accountability and transparency and trust in our financial markets. I believe that our free market has been one of the engines of America's great progress. It's a market that has created prosperity that is the envy of the world and rewarded the innovators and the inventors and the risk takers who have made America a beacon of science and technology and discovery. But the American economy has worked in large part because we've guided the market's invisible hand with a higher principle, that America prospers when all America prospers, that we grow America's economy not from the top down but from the bottom up. Whether it's working for teachers, whether it's working for the assembly line worker, whether police officers and teachers are getting a decent shake. That's the change we need right now, Greensboro. That's the kind of change I'll bring to Washington when I'm president of the United States. You know, change doesn't mean just a new slogan. I noticed John McCain's been trying to say, "I'm for change too." He's been grabbing our signs, using our slogans. He even said the other day he said, I think, "We need to turn the page." It's like, come on, John. I've been saying that for, how long have I been saying that? Pretty soon I'm going to have to start saying I'm a maverick. You gotta come up with your own stuff. Let me tell you what change means, because it doesn't just mean having a new sign. Change means a tax code that doesn't reward the lobbyists who wrote it, but the American workers and small businesses who deserve it. That's why I'm going to stop giving tax breaks to companies that ship jobs overseas. I will start giving them to companies that create good jobs right here in North Carolina. Jobs just like the 400 union jobs that AT&T just created over at Goldsboro based on their pledge to return outsourced work to our shores. That's the kind of company that needs to be rewarded. I'll eliminate capital gains taxes for small businesses and startups. That's how we're going to grow our economy and create high-wage, high-tech jobs of tomorrow. I will cut taxes for 95% of all working families. You know, my opponent doesn't want you to know this, but under my plan, tax rates will actually be less than they were under Ronald Reagan. If you make less than $250,000 a year, you do, huh? That's you. You will not see your taxes increase one dime. So when you heard John McCain last night, you notice he kept on trying to say stuff and realized it just wasn't true. After a while he stopped, he just kind of got quiet. The fact of the matter is I offer 3 times the tax relief for middle-class families that Senator McCain does. Because in an economy like this one, the last thing we should do is raise taxes on the middle class. I will finally keep the promise of affordable, accessible health care for every single American. If you've got health care, I will lower your premiums. Work with your employer. If you don't have health care, you can get the same kind of health care that members of Congress give themselves. And I'm going to let insurance companies know that it's the end of business as usual. You know, my mother, she died of cancer at 53, and that was hard enough. But when I saw her arguing during treatment with the insurance companies because they were trying to pretend this was a pre-existing condition and they might not have to pay her treatments, you know, that was wrong. I've seen a loved one suffer, not just because they were sick, but because of a broken healthcare system. We are going to put a stop to insurance companies discriminating against the sick and not following through on their commitments. I'm going to create jobs here in America, the jobs of the future, by transforming our energy sector. We're going to tap our natural gas reserves and invest in clean coal technology and find ways to safely harness nuclear power. I'll help our auto companies retool so that the fuel-efficient cars of the future are built right here in America. I'll make it easier for you to afford these new cars. And I'll invest $15 billion over the next decade in the affordable, renewable sources of energy. Wind power and solar power, the next generation of biofuels, an investment that will lead to new industries and 5 million new jobs that pay well and can't be outsourced. You know, that old textile mill suddenly is going to be making a windmill. And that old tobacco farm suddenly is going to be growing switchgrass to make cellulosic ethanol. And that old plant is suddenly going to be making solar panels. We are going to put people back to work, but we've got to have somebody in the White House who understands the future and not the past. And now is finally the time to meet our moral obligation to provide every child a world-class education. North Carolina, it will take nothing less to compete in this global economy. I'll recruit an army of new teachers, pay them higher salaries, give them more support. In exchange, we'll ask for higher standards and more accountability, but we are not going to have our teachers teach to the test because we want them teaching math and science and art and music, all the things that make an education well-rounded. And we will keep our promise to every young American. If you are willing to serve your country in the military, in the Peace Corps, working in a homeless shelter, a veterans home, or an underserved school, if you are willing to invest in America, then we're going to invest in you and make sure that every single one of you can afford to go to college. That is a guarantee that America can make to the next generation. This is the kind of change we need, the kind of bottom-up growth and innovation that will advance the American economy by advancing the dream of all Americans. So, Greensboro, I know times are hard. I will not pretend that bringing about change will be easy. George Bush has dug us into a deep hole. John McCain was carrying the shovel. It's going to take time to dig ourselves out. The change we need won't come without a cost. Although I have presented how we can achieve these changes in a fiscally responsible way. I know that we're going to have to overcome the doubts and the divisions that have become customary in American politics. We're going to have to overcome the opposition of powerful special interests before we can truly reform a broken economy and advance opportunity. But Greensboro, I'm running for president because we simply can't afford another 4 more years of an economic philosophy that works for Wall Street instead of Main Street and ends up devastating both. I don't want to wake up in 4 years to find out that more Americans lost their jobs, that more plants here in North Carolina closed, that more people are falling out of the middle class, that more families lost their savings. I don't want to see our country fail to invest in our ability to compete. Our children's future was mortgaged on another mountain of debt. Our financial markets failed to find a firmer footing. At this defining moment, we have the chance to finally stand up and say, enough is enough. America, enough is enough. We can do this because Americans have done it before. There have been times where folks have dug us into a hole and we brought ourselves out. Time and again, we've battled back from adversity by recognizing that common stake that we have in each other's success. That's why our economy hasn't just been the world's greatest wealth generator. It's bound America together. It's created jobs, and it's made the dream of opportunity a reality for generation after generation, so that people all around the world wanted to travel here to this beacon of democracy and opportunity. That's our inheritance. That's what we have to pass on to the next generation. Now it falls to us. And North Carolina, I need you to make it happen. If you want the next 4 years looking like the last 8, I'm not your candidate. But if you want real change, if you want an economy that works for you, that rewards work and not just wealth, that works for Main Street and not just Wall Street, if you want tax relief for the middle class, and if you want to see millions of new jobs created here, if you want health care you can afford and an education that helps your kids compete, then I'm asking you to get to work. North Carolina, I need you to get busy. I'm asking you to knock on some doors. I want you to make some phone calls. I need you to talk to your neighbors. I need you to give me your vote. I need you to vote early. And if you do, I promise you, I will win Greensboro, I'll win North Carolina, and we will win this general election. And then you and me together, we're going to change this country and change the world. God bless you. God bless the United States.